Welcome to the Deprogram Show. I'm your host, RMJR. We got a wonderful candidate in the building, a very special man who has his boots on the ground, running for mayor of Chattanooga. We got in the building not only the one and only Mr. Monty Bruell. How you doing, my brother?
I am doing great. I am so happy to be with you on the Deprogram Show today.
Okay. On the Deprogram Show, I like to do it a little different than any other interview. I like to get right to the point. I'm kind of different, so I kind of mix what I do into my interviews, and you'll see it. If you get uncomfortable, if there's any question you don't want to ask, we're gonna put it out there. If you don't want to answer it, you have the freedom to say I'm cool, or in your own way.
Let's roll with it.
All right. So, Mr. Monty Bruell, I do a lot of research on, am I saying your name correct? Because I don't.
You are.
Okay, because a lot of people say Monty. And see, one thing I did, I noticed how you say it. So you ain't going to mess up your own name. So that's one thing I tried to pay attention to. So I noticed you spoke on, like, helping you come up in Alton Park. You came up in Alton Park and also City View, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So first question would be, how, when and if you are elected, what do you have in place to help brown, black, and low-income people, being that you can relate to us?
Sure. Absolutely. Unlike some of the candidates in this race, I have been black my whole life. So there's not a day that I wake up and I'm something else. So I'm totally comfortable talking about these issues. The number one problem that Chattanooga has is that we have income and wealth disparities between black and brown people and white people. So if we go all the way back to 1972, when John Kinsey was elected mayor of Chattanooga, the average African-American household earned 62% what the average white household earned. Now, you fast forward all the way to 2021, and this is pre-COVID, that number has dropped to 50%. So while everybody talks about how great Chattanooga is, how much opportunity there is, how we have prospered well, that hasn't been true for African Americans. We are headed backwards. We are doing worse today than we were doing in 1997. So that's what the situation is. We've got a 35% child poverty rate in Chattanooga. And when you look at people who are in poverty, 2/3 of the households in poverty in Chattanooga are headed by single women. And so the poverty is concentrated with single mothers, their kids, and families. And you know, we've had, I think, 64 people who have been mayor of Chattanooga. They've all been rich white men, and not a single one of them has prioritized the needs of single moms, their kids, and families. So if you want to create a better Chattanooga, if you want to solve the poverty problem, well, you better look at single mothers and kids and see what they need. So having given you that background, let me tell you what I'm going to do.
Okay.
The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make CARTA free to ride for all people all the time. If you take one round trip on CARTA every day and we make it free, then depending upon how you paid for your ticket, we're going to put $600 to $1,000 a year in your pocket per person. That's not per family, that's per person. So if you're making minimum wage and I now give your whole family free transportation, then that's serious money that I'm gonna put right back in your pocket. The other thing that I'm gonna do is, you know, I'm glad that we have Volkswagen here, that we have Amazon here, but we located them all the way practically to Ottawa. You know, how are people in East Chattanooga and Alton Park supposed to get out there? So what I want to do is I want to target the 100 largest African-American owned companies in America, the 100 largest Latino owned companies in America, and the 100 largest women owned companies in America, because they haven't been recruited by anybody. Nobody goes to those companies and say, hey, we want you to come to our city. Well, what do you think it would do for East Chattanooga if we put a $250 million African-American owned company right in the middle of East Chattanooga? It would change the lives of people there. It would create jobs, and not just the jobs inside the company. I mean, it would create business for restaurant owners, shop owners, the people in the whole neighborhood. So that's the kind of thing I want to do. I also want to address childcare problems. Because, people need childcare 24/7, to be perfectly honest. If you're working a second shift job or you're working a third shift job, you don't care that the daycare center is open from 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening. You need other hours. So we're going to have to bring more and better daycare to bear on this. But those are just some of my ideas that I have. But improving the income of Black and brown people in Chattanooga is my number one priority.
Okay. Since we're on income, this is one of my pet peeves. I'm a working man. So in Tennessee, we have what's called, right to work, correct?
Yep, right to work.
So under right to work, it gives the employer pretty much any reason at all to fire you. Am I tripping, or is that a fact?
No, it should be called right to fire instead of right to work.
Yeah. See, this me. I'm one of those guys. One of the reasons why I don't actively vote, this just me, is that reason right there. My thing is, if you want me to vote for you, the first thing you got to protect is my job. Now, I ain't tripping if I do something, that if I steal something at the job, or if I'm not on time. If I don't do my job and I'm not on time and handling business, then fire me. I shouldn't be there at all. But my problem is, why do we have the right to work, which should be right to fire, or no right to fire, because they don't have to have a right? So how is it a way, if you become mayor, is it a way that you can address that? Can you hear me?
So that happens at the state level. It's our state legislature that does that. So what I want to do as mayor is I want to go to the mayors of the other 3 large cities. I want to go to the mayor of Memphis, the mayor of Nashville, the mayor of Knoxville, and I want us all to get together. And I want us to agree on all the things we want from the state legislature, because the people in those 4 cities comprise 65% of the entire state's population. And we don't need our state legislature trying to preempt the rights of cities and the rights of mayors, which is what they do. Every time somebody tries to do something progressive, our state legislature tries to do an end around and come up with some law to keep them from being able to do it. So if we can't get from the state the things that we need and the things that we want, I'm prepared, either with the other mayors or even by myself, to go to the courthouse. I will sue the state of Tennessee because I think that the state has overstepped its constitutional authority. And I think that they're doing things to deliberately keep people, oppressed, and to not let mayors do the right thing by their own people. I mean, we saw this during, COVID. Mayor Burke wanted to, take some action to curtail it. He wanted to make people wear masks. And the governor said, oh, no, you can't do that. I'm the governor. I make that decision. Well, that would have been a case where I would have gone to the courthouse and we would have seen who's going to get to make that decision.
Yeah, because if I'm looking at it correctly, because I try to do my research, the mayor is like the governor over the city, correct?
Right. Yes.
So it's like you step in and tell the city, hey, this is what we gonna do when you got a governor on that level saying, hey, this is what we're gonna do.
Right. So we have in Tennessee something called home rule. And home rule says that in any area where the state hasn't already passed a law, the cities get to decide what to do. Well, there have been cases like I think Nashville was talking about a $15 an hour minimum wage that they were going to put in place for Nashville. Well, the state legislature went and passed a law saying that cities didn't have the right to a set of minimum wage. And so they went behind Nashville's back because they didn't want that precedent for other cities in the state. And that's just crazy. You know, they weren't even thinking about it till the mayor of Nashville said, you know what, I think our people should make more money. And the legislature said, oh, we can't let that happen. That's crazy.
So it's like, that sounds like to me, they want to keep you impoverished.
Yes, yes. And that's how they market our state to companies. They don't go to companies, like they didn't go to Volkswagen and Amazon and say, oh, come here, we have the best workers. They didn't say we have the smartest workers. They didn't say we have the most productive workers. They said our people work for cheap. And if you come here, we'll make sure they continue to work for cheap. Now that's selling your workers out. You can't sell people out like that.
And I mean, so now you see my frustration with how things go, because I'm like, how can you expect me? I ain't tripping. I understand the whole game, but it's like, at the end of the day, my livelihood is more important than anything, because that's how I feed my family. That's how I pay my bills. And you got this man over here making this amount of money. I can't even go to my employer and say, hey, we do the same job. I need this. They like, get out my face.
Exactly.
Then you want me to go and participate in a system when I'm like, hey, what about this? Because this is the bottom line.
Well, I hope I'm going to change your mind about voting in this next election, because I'm the mayor that's going to fight for you. I'm the mayor that's going to try to stand up and do the right thing. And that's why we've got to reject all of these same old kinds of people who are running for office. They're part of the problem. They created the problem. You know, it's like the joke where you can't kill your parents and then ask for the court to have mercy on you because you're an orphan. Well, you know, this is the same thing. You can't create this corrupt system and then run on a campaign, well, I'm going to change the corrupt system. That's just BS.
All right. We'll deal with this. This kind of goes into it. The system, the corrupt system. You made a statement that Black, brown, and impoverished people have been put in a jail cell in Chattanooga, and voting is the key to get up out of that. Can you elaborate on how voting will help us get out of this prison that they have put us in?
Sure. So Chattanooga is a city of right at 200,000 people. We have 103,000 registered voters. Of those 103,000 registered voters, let's just say 30,000 of them are African American. In the last city election, only 19,000 people voted. And Andy Burke became mayor of the city of Chattanooga with 11,000 votes. 11,000 votes, because so many people sat on the sidelines. And the system is designed this way. I mean, we can talk about how they designed the system to produce this low voter turnout. This is probably too strong a phrase, but I think that we're in danger of having a kind of apartheid in Chattanooga, where through making sure that we're policing Black and brown neighborhoods and sticking felony convictions on Black and brown people, we get to strip away their voting rights. And so if you've stripped away everybody's voting rights, it doesn't matter whether you're the majority or the minority. Because as the minority, if you've taken away the voting power of the majority, you control it. And so that's why it's important that African Americans, Latinos, and other minorities always vote. Because if there are 30 to 40,000 minority votes in Chattanooga, and it only takes 11,000 to elect the mayor, then we should be electing every mayor. But because we sit it out, because we don't go to the polls, the majority gets to retain power with just 11,000 votes. That's bad. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. Let me ask you this, because you're in a very important race. In the mayoral race, have you feel in previous elections that is set up?
Well, in most elections, you don't have the number of candidates that you have running here, and I'm just going to be totally honest with you. I think what has happened in this race is that when I entered the race, the establishment became a little bit worried that I had a really good chance of winning, because I'm from Alton Park, I'm from City View, I'm from East Chattanooga, but I'm also Baylor's first African-American graduate. And I went to Harvard after Baylor, so I have a degree in economics from Harvard. So I'm gonna, yes, I want the black vote, I want the brown vote, but I'm gonna get my share of the white vote too. And that makes me unlike any other African-American who's run for mayor before. People are scared of me because I draw from every zip code in Chattanooga, and that is a danger to the power structure.
So it's like they put the fix in by, okay, we got this guy, he's a threat. So we also have, let's throw some more people out there just to confuse people. Then you have people who don't even really care about, they probably, I'm gonna be honest, you don't have to say it, I'm gonna say it. They done paid people, hey, go on and enter this. Bro, we know you're not gonna win. We know you're not gonna win. You ain't even gotta push too hard. We gonna pay you to appeal to who you appeal to, and don't worry about it. We got this bag over here for you.
Well, that's what I've heard. I have heard people have gotten paid. I'm not going to name any names, but yeah, that is exactly what's going on.
Because I'm gonna say this, I feel like some of the mayor candidates want to say this, so I say it for you, so y'all won't catch no flack. It's like, if I'm really running for mayor, I'm gonna speak for me. If I'm running for mayor and I really want to be the mayor of Chattanooga, I'm going to show up to every debate. I'm going to show up to every function. I'm going to be everywhere throughout the city. I'm not just going to say, let me go on Facebook or let me go on YouTube and say, hey, I'm Roland McClendon and I'm running for mayor. But you never see me.
Right.
It just, to me, that don't make sense. So I knew when I seen that many candidates, I was like, y'all up to something. It's a trick bag somewhere.
And then, the cherry on top of the cake here is that someone found a candidate with my first name and a very similar last name, Monty Bell. Now, nobody was even talking about anybody named Monty Bell running until I began to gain momentum. And then all of a sudden, somebody dug up Monty Bell to put him on the ballot to confuse people because of our names. And that's when I knew, oh, they're coming for me. They are really coming for me now.
Because I'm not going to say the company's name, but when I say what I say, you're going to already know. You have a company who pretty much dictates what go on in this city. And the way they get down, for the most part, we gonna put you in place so you could take care of our business. And guess what? they have a candidate in the race. I'm not going to throw no names out there. Do your research, and you'll see that I'm not telling no lies. So what is happening is it's the system continuing. And you got Mr. Bruell, who will get in the west side, who will go to the south side, talk to Lil Mo Films, talk to RMJR on the deprogram show. They like, no, hold on. This dude could really win. He touching people on this side, he touching people on that side, and then he touching people like your Marie Motts, shout out to Marie, who keep her boots on the ground, and they like, interesting. And then it's like, what is your plan if you really, now this is not a question for you, but I'm like, to the other people, quit playing. And see, this me. I'm from the west side, College Hill Courts, and y'all gonna know what this about. I've been in the west side. I've lived in the west side for 18 years. My mother, she still live in the west side. And I'm gonna go on and say it. I didn't find out the candidate from the west side was from the west side till he ran for mayor. Y'all, am I tripping? This ain't no knock on you, but bro, if you from the hood and you was the city attorney, why you didn't come holler at us? You forgot?
Yeah. Well, he came for a photo op to make his announcement. He stood on the steps of James A. Henry Elementary and said, "Oh, this is where I went to school." And then he got in his car and drove away.
I mean, this is my thing. I don't knock nobody, but how can Monty Brewer or Money Brewer be from Alden Park and be from City View? And I see you go through the west side with somebody from the west side, Jamal Hicks, aka Maul the Pimp, and Lil Mo Films, who's from the east side. I think Lil Mo from Paws Home, my bad. But somebody from the south side and from the west side and be in the trenches talking to my brother Alan Anderson, who was talking about trespassing. My brother can't even walk from the top of the hill to the store without getting stopped. Come on, right, bro.
Yeah. And so who do the police report to? The police report to the mayor. And that's another reason why it's important who your mayor is, because we've got to change the way we police neighborhoods. I say all the time, if the police spend as much time watching teenagers in Riverview as they spent watching teenagers in Alton Park, then there'd be a whole lot of white kids from Riverview locked up. Because it's not that nobody's doing anything over there. It's just that nobody's watching, nobody cares, nobody's paying attention. If you stopped every car, you're gonna make a lot of possession arrests in Riverview. That's just how it is.
I mean, one of the reasons why is, like, if I'm in the west side, I got to be on alert. All right, let me make sure if I'm driving through the west side, go see my mother, I got to be on alert. Let me get in, let me get out. But I could be in Riverview and be a different shade or a different tone. I'm talking about color. And I can have everything I want to have on me. Oh, man, you go on, because this is not, quote unquote, a high crime area. Right. This is a question I have for you, though. We seen the 32, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we also seen the guys, the Athens Park Bloods, who they was trying to put the RICO case on them.
Right.
My first question, we had a situation to where we had some guys get busted for meth. They didn't look like the 32 and did not look like the guys who was Athens Park Bloods. Why? This is just a question. Like I say, if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. Why do you think the emphasis was put on the worst of the worst when the 32 got caught, and the emphasis was put on the Athens Park Bloods when they was caught, but we've seen hardly anything on these guys who got caught with this meth? Why is that?
Well, because creating a boogeyman is good for business. If you know that in our culture, people, particularly white people, have been indoctrinated to be afraid of Black men specifically. If you know that that is a fear, that even if it's not conscious, even if you don't go through life going, you know, I'm afraid of Black men or I hate Black men, even if that's not who you are, it's in the back of your mind. And so if you want to justify your worth, if you want to say, oh, look what a great job we're doing policing our city, then you want lots of pictures of you putting that Black boogeyman in handcuffs. And that plays to the deepest part of our culture. That is like the shame and the evil that we don't ever talk about, that goes all the way back to slavery. And that's why those people get treated differently, because there's no value in showing you, you know, locking up the white people on the meth bust. But you get a lot of mileage. I mean, people, every TV station will show up, every media outlet will be there to show you putting the Black people you arrest, you know, through the perp walk. And so that's the difference. I mean, it's really just playing upon, you know, evil stuff that goes deep in our cultural psyche.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Do you have anything in place to, I ain't gonna say eliminate crime. I'm not gonna sit here and say no person, I don't care what position you is, going to eliminate crime. But do you have anything in place to help those who really don't want to be, I'm saying in the Black community, who really don't want to be in the drug business, or in to keep the ones who really don't want to do it from being criminals? By a lot of them get money. And I noticed you spoke on that earlier about jobs. Like, how would a guy who's been in a gang, who's maybe has a felony, what do you have in place for him? Or do you have anything?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we have to look at the root causes of crime, right? So one of the root causes of crime is poverty. If you look at the highest income census tract in the city, the average household income is $190,000 a year. If you look at the poorest census tract in Chattanooga, the average household income is $5,000 a year. I'm not talking about 5,000 a person. I'm talking 5,000 for the household.
A year?
So, a year. So if you are a person who is trapped in that kind of poverty, like I don't know how you take care of one person legally on $5,000 a year, right? So you've got to have a huge motivation to do things outside the law just to get by. It's like you're not robbing somebody because you're a bad person, or even because you want to rob them. You're robbing them because you're hungry, or your kids are hungry. You know, there's something you've got to do. So we have to take a look at poverty and try to do things to raise the level of income in deeply, deeply impoverished communities. The other thing is, you know, our own police department says that 65% of all burglaries in Chattanooga are related to some kind of addiction. People are just stealing stuff so that they can sell it and get money to feed their addiction. But do we ever do anything to help people kick the addiction? Do we ever send people to rehab? No, we just keep arresting the same addicted people over and over and over again. And it just doesn't make sense. I mean, if you ask an 8-year-old, you know, whether they thought that this was the right thing to do, they would say, no, that seems silly. You know, if the person is an addict, why don't you help them, you know, with the addiction? So we've got to do things like that. And then I think that when we put more jobs in the community, when we put more jobs in the neighborhood, then we can, you know, talk about second chance programs and yes, you've got a felony conviction, but you know, we'll hire you if you can, you know, stay clean for a year or something like that. I think there are all kinds of opportunities there. And then the last thing I will say is the way our YFD department is set up doesn't make any sense to me either. Like, you know, there used to be a rec center at College Hill Courts, but there isn't anymore. And the rec centers that we have are closed on the weekend. So what is, you know, a teenager supposed to do, you know, when they can't go to the rec center, they can't, you know, find, you know, positive ways of spending their time. It's not that our kids are criminal, they're just bored. I think that if we opened the rec centers and had them there, you know, had them open on Saturdays and, you know, maybe not Sunday, but certainly on Saturday, that gives our kids something to do. But, you know, when you look at the schools too, 36% of our kids, only 36% of our kids read at grade level. And that's for every kid in the school. I mean, that's not just African American kids, that's everybody. So again, we're producing, you know, kids every year who can't read, and we put them out in society. We say, good luck to you. And it's just wrong. So as mayor, I've got to be involved in all of these things. It's not like I get to pick which one I want to do. I got to do all of them, because that's how we're going to make neighborhoods better and how we're going to improve the lives of people.
Okay, let me say this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it is a center in College Hill Courts. I think what has happened, because if I don't say this, I got some people who know me personally, they gonna be at my head, and they should be. The centers are closed due to COVID.
Okay.
So that's why they're not operating.
Okay. Well, let me say this.
Okay.
So I will accept that maybe I misheard the information, but what I didn't hear, or I didn't mishear or missee, is that sorry playground at College Hill Courts. So I saw that with my own eyes. You know, I don't even know why that exists that way. They've got there are two things. There are two things on the playground. There's a big old hole where you can see there used to be other equipment, but it got removed for whatever reason. So I may be wrong about the rec center, but I'm not wrong about that crappy playground.
Which playground are you talking about? Is you talking about the one inside the projects or
inside? So if you're at the flagpole and you're walking by there's a playground, you know, that you can see from the flagpole.
I'm gonna tell you something. I'm 30. I'll be 38 in March. The playground was done. I'm gonna show you how long ago they did repairs on the playground. They put the playground up. My father died in 1998. He was involved in putting the playground together initially. The playground hasn't had updates since I graduated, or a little before I graduated high school. And I graduated high school in the year 2001, and we are in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's pretty clear to me that some neighborhoods, you know, and I'm sure College Hill Courts isn't the only one. I'm sure I can go other places and see, you know, that kind of neglect. So why is it that city government doesn't pay attention to some neighborhoods, and they seem to pay a lot of attention to other neighborhoods? So I'm going to tell you two stories.
Okay.
Last week I was in I was in Churchville, I was in Bushtown, and I was on the west side. And at least one person in each of those neighborhoods said to me, look around, just open your eyes and look at our neighborhood and just ask yourself, is this right? Like, when do we get something? When do we get something? And I had to look around and I said, you're right. You have been neglected. But the reverse of that is I was in Jefferson Heights on the south side, an affluent neighborhood. And I asked a woman what she wanted from me as mayor. And she looked at me, and I'm going to say she was probably in her 30s, maybe 35 or so. She looked at me and she said, I don't want anything. I am so tired of city council people kissing our behinds over here because we are, rich. Not, she didn't say rich, she said white people who are pretty well off. What I want you to do is I want you to take care of other people. I want you to take care of other parts of the city, because it's almost embarrassing how fast people from the city come tripping over themselves when something in this neighborhood needs to be fixed. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, I can do that. So it's pretty obvious when somebody in Jefferson Heights, who probably has never been to the West Side, but has eyes to see, can just look around and see the inequity that exists in Chattanooga and how the government treats people differently, how their own city government isn't even fair about the allocation of resources.
Okay, so let me ask you this, based on, because you was in College Hill, of course, where I'm from, the West Side. Is it anything, I'm just asking, is it anything you could do as mayor, if elected, to slow down the process? Because I know they finna tear down the West Side. We ain't finna sugarcoat it. Right. Is it anything the mayor can do to slow down or even stop that process? Is it possible?
Well, I think that train has pretty much left the station. In fact, last week at the city council meeting, the city council approved the plans for the development on the Alston property, which they're calling the Bend. So the city council has already green-lighted that as of last week. So I think that's going to happen. What we need to do, and let me say this too, the College Hill Courts is in sad and sorry physical condition. I don't want anybody living in a building that's 100 years old and without any air conditioning or any kind of amenities whatsoever. I don't want that. But we've got to make sure that we don't turn the West Side into just another affluent neighborhood. We've got to have affordable housing. We've got to continue to have public housing so that we have a diverse community. Every study that I've ever seen says that diversity is better than having no diversity. When you look at schools, for example, diverse schools that have a mix of ethnicities, that have rich people, poor people, those schools perform better than schools that only have rich white people. And so diversity is good. And we need to keep that in College Hill Court. So we've got to make sure that if we're tearing down those housing units, we are replacing them with other housing units. The one power that the mayor has in all of this is that the mayor appoints the board of the Chattanooga Housing Authority. So as mayor, I get to appoint the entire board of the Chattanooga Housing Authority. And one of the questions I have is I don't believe that there's ever been a board member of the Housing Authority who was either a current or former resident of public housing. So how are you going to manage public housing when you've never even lived in public housing? It's crazy, right? So, you want to ask, one of the things that I'm going to do differently, I'm going to make sure that there's a board member on the Housing Authority Board who has had some personal experience with public housing. Now, that doesn't mean they live in it right then and there, but at some point in their life they did, and they can speak to that from their own personal experience.
Okay, that would be great. And if possible, I don't know what the qualifications would be. Me, Roland McClendon Jr., that's my government name. I would be very happy to sit on that board, because I'm going to tell you why. I grew up in the West Side. I lived in the West Side from birth until I was a grown man at the age of 18. And once I became an adult, I went to a prison. I want to say it was in Wartburg or something. And it triggered something in my head. And I done talked about this on the Deprogram show before. But if you look at the conditions of the West Side and other housing projects before the West Side, your Alton Parks, your Paz homes, and even Wheeler homes, I noticed something when I went to the prison. If you remove the guards and you remove the inmates, the prison and those projects look exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And what clicked in my head, I was like, So I grew up in an impoverished area. So basically, you want me to feel at home when I go to the penitentiary. It's something wrong with that.
Oh, yeah.
And then not only that, if you go up the hill from College Hill Courts, if you go to the Boynton Overlooks, I lived in the Boynton Overlooks for a few years. If you look at the way the building is constructed and you go downtown to the county jail and look how that building is constructed, if you really pay attention, the only difference is guards and locked doors. And Mr. Bruell, tell me, am I tripping?
You are not tripping. I think that it's on purpose that there are those similarities.
Of course. Because this is what they do. And I'm saying you spoke to something earlier. You spoke to the mayor being how long has that been a thing where they appoint the whole council of the housing project?
Oh, it's been a while. It's probably been 20 years.
So that tells me that the mayors of this city, just this city, we're just going to speak on Chattanooga, they have planned for 20 years. I'm 37, finna be 38. I would have been 17, getting ready to turn 18, for at least 20 years saying, hey, you live in these conditions. Most of you, your parents, if you have a mother, your mother, 9 times out of 10, your father's not going to be there. If your father's there, your father has to hide while he's in the house. So we're banking on you going to jail.
So if you look at a government, there are people in a government whose job it is to predict the number of jail cells that the city is or the county is going to need. And there are people whose job it is to predict the number of classrooms and schools that they're going to need. And in some cities, and I don't even know what it is in Chattanooga, but in some cities, there are places where they are building jails faster than they're building schools, because they have a pipeline to send people to jail over sending people to school. And that's again, it's crazy. And what we have learned over the last 4 years with the Trump administration is that now people don't even try to hide this crazy stuff. No one is hiding that they are racist. No one is hiding that they are, discriminatory. we had a guy in the White House who legitimized it, who made it okay for people to stand up and go, oh yeah, I'm proud of my heritage. I don't know about those people. I mean, we are living in a crazy time, and somebody has got to stand up and say, wait a minute, this is foolishness, and it's got to stop. And I, thank God we've got Biden and Harris in the White House, and at least for the next 2 years they have control of both houses of Congress. But this is going to be a time that we need to put on our track shoes, and we've got to do some hard work to get control of society, because it has fallen in a ditch, and we've got to put it back on track.
One thing I'll say about the Trump administration, I ain't for Trump, I ain't against him. One thing that I appreciated about the Trump administration, I'd rather you let me know you don't like me. That's just me. Right. I don't want you to be in it. I like what Trump represented. Okay, you don't like black folks, let us know, and I know how to move accordingly. Don't snake me. Oh, I love you. Then bust me over the head and then say, it wasn't me.
Right.
So I don't have an issue far as Trump concerned with that, because if I don't like you, like, okay, with that guy you dealt with, it was a story. Well, true story. You went through it yourself. You was downtown. You got admitted in Baylor. You got your Baylor jacket on. A man approached you basically saying, what you doing with this jacket on? You can't be representing this school.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, you might not appreciate what the man did, but it's good. He said, look, I don't like you, blah, blah, blah. So with that being said, the school, which they did from your own admission, they banned him for life.
Right.
Just think how many who, we got to hide who we are. They might feel the same way that man felt. They might even went to school with you. I'm pretty sure it was some who went to school with you and after you, but like, man, I can't stand him. And it's really out of ignorance, because for one, if I don't know you, I'm just going by something I was taught, which is ignorance is taught all day. But I'd rather you show me. That's why I'm like, Trump, I ain't tripping on Trump. But Biden, this me. I ain't pro-Biden. Biden has also showed us, both of them done showed us for the most part, we don't like you. So I don't want our people to get rocked to sleep because he chose Kamala Harris, or Miss Harris, if I'm saying her name wrong.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And people ask me all the time, they say, okay, Monty, what you're saying sounds good, but how do we know you're not going to get in there and just be like everybody else? And, because everybody tells us what we want to hear when it's election time. Well, you've got to hold me accountable. You've got to hold my feet to the fire. And one thing that I've said is, I'm not going to be the mayor who hides in City Hall all the time. I'm going to be the mayor who's out in the neighborhoods and out talking to people. And I think people have the right to not only say to me or to a city council person that we're doing a good job. People should have the right to come up and say, hey, you're doing a crappy job. And that's how we're going to get better. So, hold me accountable, come up to me and tell me you think I'm doing a lousy job, if that's what you believe. And then if I really haven't delivered on my promises, vote me out. Don't make me a 2-term mayor, make me a 1-term mayor, because that is the power of the people. And that is really why I'm running. I want people to appreciate the power that they have.
So we can count on you, if you elected, to be still in the West Side, still on the East Side, doing this canvassing for the people. Can we count on that?
You can count on that, and you can count on me as mayor coming back on the Deprogram show. And you can ask me, anything you want, because, I'm not going to change my willingness to come and talk to people and be held accountable.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Since you talked to my brother, Mr. Anderson in the West Side,
Mm-hmm.
have you came up with, or did you already have something in place to deal with the trespassing issue? Because that's a terrible thing, man. And that's not just in the West Side, but across the board. It's like my mother, I could be a victim of that. My mother lives in the College Hill courts. I don't live with my mother, but I could go visit my mother and could easily be placed on the trespassing list.
Oh yeah. So the very first time that I talked to Maul, that is the thing he said to me. He said, every time I go visit my friends, I risk getting trespassed, because they look at my driver's license. They say, you don't live around here. What you doing over here? He said, I should have a right to go visit my family. I should have the right to go visit my friends. And that's true. So when we change the way our police our neighborhoods, then that's going to be something that we're going to have to do away with, because it doesn't make any sense. I can get in my car and I can go visit my parents in East Brainerd, and no one's ever going to pull me over. No one's ever going to look at my license and go, oh, you don't live in East Brainerd. Well, what are you doing over here? That's just not going to happen. There's no good reason for doing it, and we need to stop it.
So it's like I done been to jail too. I'm gonna keep it all the way real. It's like when I was living in the West Side, I'll never forget it. I'm not even gonna say the officer's name, but if he see this and he know who he is, I'll never forget it. I was actually a resident in College Hill Courts. Me and a couple of my friends, we was walking, and we was actually walking to talk to another group of our friends. So it's like a one-way. Well, actually, my mother lives on the one way now, where you go down and you go in the dip and you go back out. So the police, they was in I want to say they was in a green van at the time. They drove down, hopped out on us with guns, and said, freeze. This in broad daylight. And they told us, what y'all doing on the block? This our block. This bloop, bloop, bloop. And we were like, hey, bro, we live out here. Now I can't say everybody who was in that circle wasn't doing what they do. But my thing is, I'm like, they made us pull everything out of our pockets. They told us they better not catch us. They told us they better not catch us in an area where we live.
Right.
So it's like, what that told me is, we treating this just they call it penitentiary rules in effect. The same thing apply in the pen or Silverdale, which is a lower level penitentiary for those who don't know. The same thing that applies out there applies in here. Get in your cell. Just like when they come down and they tell residents, I've seen it, get in your house. We conducting business. I'm paying rent.
So back in the day, I was the chairman of an organization called Chattanooga Venture that did a lot of community goal setting and citizen empowerment. And so one of the things I'm the proudest of is that we set up a neighborhood association at Harriet Tubman Homes, which of course doesn't exist anymore. But we wanted to prove that public housing was as much a neighborhood as any other place in Chattanooga, and that the people who lived in that neighborhood had a right to have a say in what went on and how things happened there. And you mentioned not having guards. Well, I've heard stories about employees of the housing authority about how they are disrespectful, how they treat people who live in public housing. And so, that's very much like being in prison. And I think that you shouldn't have public housing without a neighborhood association. I think that the residents ought to have a formal way of letting people know what they want, what they need, and what they're unhappy with. Because again, it's about putting power back in the hands of the people. And we don't need a plantation mentality where you have a group of people, on high who just are controlling everybody else who's living there. That's got to stop.
And one thing I'm gonna put out there, I'm gonna put this out there for those who don't know, because I lived in College Hill Courts, and you made an interesting point. Shout out to Miss Ann Watley. First of all, at one point she was the head of the neighborhood association in Boone Heights, and
she was the first one, and that's who I worked with to put that together.
So I ain't tripping. Right. I know what I'm talking about. So I said that to say this. Jamal Hicks grew up in the West Side. Roland McClendon grew up in the West Side. We didn't grow up in East Brainerd, but when I see Jamal Hicks, I see my brother. We have the same camaraderie as folks in Brainerd, East Brainerd. Actually, we have a stronger camaraderie. If you grew up in Elm Park and you know other dudes and other females who grew up in Elm Park, when somebody who died from those impoverished areas, we look at it as a family member loss. Because I don't think people understand that. When we lose a friend, that's our brother. We had a guy who's close to us, I'm not going to say his name. His son died. I traveled one day to go see him out of town, and at the funeral, I couldn't make it. Other guys went to his son's funeral, and we was all from the same neighborhood, because what y'all fail to realize, who don't know, who are not from College Hill Courts, Elm Park, Boone Heights, Pa's Home, that's a community to us. We might not have the big houses like in East Brainerd, China, or whatever, Hickson, but we have a stronger camaraderie because, for one, we got to deal with the police. We had to deal with getting treated bad in school. We had to deal with the lack of resources, and we have to make our way through life to even get to East Brainerd. And we never forget the real ones. I ain't never forgot that I'm from the West Side, and I go out there on the regular, not just because my mother live out there, but because I have people that I'm connected with. When they see me, we see brothers. Those are my brothers who I grew up with. And all of them ain't criminals. But that's one of the reasons why I started the Deprogram show, because the programming tells us, oh, if you from Elm Park, or if you from the West Side, you're nothing but a criminal, which that's furthest from the truth.
That's right.
And man, I just appreciate somebody being from those areas who can understand what it's like. Now, I got to touch on this. I don't even know if we touched on education. Now, you stated that you want to empower the teachers instead of, I ain't going to say instead of, because I don't want to put no words in your mouth. You stated empowering the teachers almost on the same level as the superintendent, but just giving them more power. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
So what would that look like? Because that definitely needs to happen, because I'm pretty sure you've been in a school, especially an inner city school, where the teacher is flat out disrespected and make low wages for what for their job. Because what people don't understand, as a teacher, you are a parent. Even if you don't have no children, those are your children, because a lot of teachers see their children more than the parents do, believe it or not. So what does that look like? Yeah. Because I also know your daughter, correct me if I'm wrong, your daughter's a teacher, so I know she can sympathize with this. So what do you have in place to give the teachers more power than they have?
You did do your research. Um, yeah, so the way our system is set up, our public school system, is maybe you start as a teacher, then you become a principal, and then you get promoted to some job at the central office, whatever. And we try to regiment everything. So the people at the central office set the curriculum. They determine, what's going to be taught in the classroom. The problem that we have is the teacher. Now, this is the point of product delivery, if you will, where the kids are getting educated. You're dealing with the least powerful person of the public school system there. So I went to Baylor. If you go to a classroom at Baylor, the headmaster at Baylor wouldn't even consider walking into somebody's classroom and telling them how to teach. Wouldn't even think about it. So the teachers in that setting are empowered to do what they feel is best for their kids. And that may vary from year to year. Like you may teach English, 1 year, and then the next year you have a different set of kids and they don't respond the same way. So you teach it a different way. Well, public school teachers don't have that kind of flexibility. They don't have that kind of control. And so when I say giving teachers more power, I'm talking about giving them more power to control how they teach, to control the relationship they have with their kids, to be able to say, well, I want to add this book because, I've got a student who I think this will resonate with. We're always hearing about teachers who get in trouble because they bring in some book that wasn't authorized by the school, and some parent goes, I can't believe you're teaching that. That book had sex in it. We can't teach that. Well, that might have been one page out of the whole book. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think our world has sex in it. And so, what are we preparing the kids for if it's not for the real world? So I hear from my daughter, all the time, she's got so many reports to fill out and all this other stuff because the public school teachers are trained to produce test scores. They're not actually trained to teach. They're trained to produce test scores. And so that requires, a lot of documentation and really, and this is me talking. I don't want anybody to think my daughter said this, but this is Monty Bruell talking. I think the way the system is set up, it just sucks the joy out of the teachers. You may start your career and you're very happy and very enthusiastic and you want to do the right thing. And then the system beats you down at every turn. I just want a system that lifts teachers up, that doesn't beat teachers down, that pays them a fair wage and allows them to do the job. Just allows them to be the best that they can be. And we don't have that. And I'll say one more thing about teaching. The Benwood Foundation here has funded a lot of programs that they put in place. But what the head of Benwood said to me one day is that the biggest return that they get from dollars that they invest is when they invest in the continuing education of teachers. Like when they have a program and they enrich the teacher immediately passes that on to the students. They can track that, they can see the result. And so I think we really need to invest more in our teachers and give them resources. And I have said to Superintendent Johnson, Brian Johnson, I've said, Brian, I know that as the mayor of Chattanooga, I'm not going to be your boss. I can't tell you what to do, but I can be your partner. I can work with you for the schools that are inside the city limits of Chattanooga. And maybe, we can identify some resources and the city can step up to the plate and provide that. Because even though we may not be in the school business, we are in the education business. And we cannot be a successful city unless we do the best to provide our kids with a quality education and give them the opportunity to be successful too.
So let me ask you this. Being that you went to Superintendent Johnson, right? That's his last name.
Yep.
Did he say, I'm asking, did he say, yeah, I'm willing to work with you on that? I'm willing to partner with you if you're married. Did he say that?
He said that absolutely. That's exactly what he said.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I think he would like more partners. I think the challenge of that job is people talk about education, but they don't walk the walk. And so, he's been to lots of meetings where people have said publicly, well, we need to get together because I want to help you. And then the next day when he calls, it's like, I'm busy for the next 4 months. Maybe we can schedule something down the road. So yeah, I mean, everybody loves to say how wonderful education is and how they support it, but then they don't ever do anything about it. Because again, it's not necessarily their kids who are even in the system. If you look at the United States as a whole, in any given city, about 15% of all the kids go to private school. 85% go to public school. In Chattanooga, 35% of our kids go to private school and 65% are in public school. So we have more than twice the national average of our kids who actually go to some kind of private school. And that may mean, Baylor or Macaulay or GPS, but it's also, a parochial or Christian academy that a church might have too. All of those count, in those numbers.
So let me ask you this. Since you stated that about education, can the state or I guess this is, I'm thinking about it now, but I guess this is a state level question. Well, what can the mayor of Chattanooga do I hope you get elected so you could change my mind, especially on this voting, because I feel like, I'm going to just say it to you, because I feel like you're a real dude. I just feel like it's a game. It's a sham. I'm always 100 with how I feel. I just feel like it's a sham. Like, I look at it, the reason that is, and I'm pretty sure if I live in the West Side, my mother can't afford to send me to a Baylor or a Macaulay, and I'm pretty sure you can sympathize, or your GPSs and stuff like that, because we could barely pay for. If we could do anything more, we wouldn't live where we live.
Right.
So is it anything to curb the cost, or that's pretty much is the way it is? Because they charging at these private schools, they're charging college tuition for education, basically.
Yeah. So when I started Baylor in the 7th grade, I lived in City View Apartments, and I was on scholarship. That was how I got to go there. I didn't go because we could afford it, because we could not afford it. I just happened to be, selected and was able to get the scholarship. And schools like Baylor and Macaulay and GPS, they have scholarship money. So if you are a smart kid and they decide that they want to have you there, then they can usually find a way to get it paid for. But my point there is, you shouldn't have to go to Baylor to get a great education. You shouldn't have to go to Baylor so that you can then go to Harvard. You should be able to go to any public school and be guaranteed that you're going to get a good education. Now, you may not have the same facilities that a private school has. You may not have the beautiful campus, but your education should be quality. And that's where we have to put the focus. I hate it that when I tell people I'm Baylor's first African American graduate, that it's some kind of big deal. It's like, oh, you are. It shouldn't be a big deal at all, because we should be getting, quality educations from a variety of sources, and it ought to begin with public school. And even if you choose to send your kids to a private school, you still have an obligation to pay your taxes and to support public schools and make sure that the public schools are the best they can be.
Okay. So what about homeschool? Because when we hear about education, most of the time nobody mentions homeschool. And me
Right.
personally, I feel like that's the most important, because homeschooling, I know it's limitations and guidelines, but homeschooling, it gives this child more of a personal, it gives them more, I believe this, and you might disagree, but homeschool students are more responsible and more astute than students who are in the public setting. But that's just me. So what do you think could be done to help homeschoolers?
Well, I think homeschooling has its place. And my daughter was homeschooled for at least a year in elementary school, maybe two, but I know 1 year she was definitely homeschooled. And what we're seeing in this pandemic, where kids, everybody's homeschooled now, is that it's wearing parents out. Just because you are a smart person doesn't make you know how to teach. And so I think homeschooling is only as good as the parent's ability to be a great teacher. And in the case of kids who are blessed with a mother or father who can step in and be that kind of teacher, then they're getting, one-on-one or, one-on-two or three attention. And that's very good. So the people I know who've had the best outcome from homeschooling, and this is just people I know, I haven't done any kind of study or anything. I think people who take a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and they're homeschooled, and it's the right environment, they can come back into the classroom and they're kind of ahead of everybody else. And it's a good position to be in. But, kids need socialization. You can't just take somebody out of school. Like I'm an only child. If my mother had taken me out of school and I had been homeschooled just been, with my mother for, the majority of my education, I'd probably be crazy as a loon. I wouldn't even know how to act around people. So I think it's important that kids spend some of their time in the classroom, even if they do spend some time being homeschooled.
I understand that, but this is me. This is just me. The reason I said homeschool, you said something key. You got to have the right environment. Now, I'm not saying homeschool your children to where you don't have, they definitely got to be involved with other children. They at some point. And and homeschoolers, some homeschoolers, they have a homeschool association to where they even get together and have field trips and do activities with other people. So it do have to be the right environment. And the person who teaching, this is just me, I believe the right environment is the person who teaching their child should be their job. I'm a firm component. I believe, me personally, I believe in the Bible. I believe that man supposed to work, take care of his responsibility. I truly believe that the woman I think if she's capable, not all on me, to those who are not, this is not a knock on you. But if she's capable, I believe her duty is to teach the child. It's just, that's why I was speaking on homeschool, because I don't want to leave nobody out. And you did make a good point. It do have to be the right environment.
Right.
Man, I appreciate you, man. Before we get out of here, is it anything you want to leave with the people of Chattanooga?
Well, the only thing I want to leave is something we've already said, that the way to get out of this jail cell that many of us are locked in is to vote, because we have enough votes in the Black, brown, and low income communities that we could have something better. But we seem to be like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football. Lucy keeps holding the football down and saying, "Oh, trust me, I'm going to let you kick it." And then we run up like Charlie Brown and we try, and the football gets yanked away. So let's not fall for another of the same kind of mayoral candidate who's going to hold a football and say, "I've got a plan. I've got a plan. So come on, run up and try to kick the ball." And then all they're going to do is yank it away. We have fallen for this time and time again. And it's time to just realize that we've got to do something different. And I am the candidate who's going to bring that difference. And I'm the mayor who's going to bring that difference. And I want the people, whether they believe that their vote counts or not, whether they believe that the system is rigged, I want them to try it. Go to the polls, vote for Monty Bruell, and then when I win, I'm going to deliver. That's my promise to you.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna leave y'all with this, and I believe you can appreciate this. And this really bag up your statement. The reason more black people, it's a lot of black people out there, they won't say it, but they feel just like I feel. And they don't even, a lot of them don't even know how to articulate, man, why I don't vote. Because we've had people like your councilman, I ain't gonna say no names, your people on certain levels, they get us riled up, we'll go vote. We'll vote for them. A lot of them have even got elected. Then when they sit in these positions, they like, So that makes people be like, man, I'm not finna keep. Now you told me you had me. Then when you got in office, we like, this is the thing. And I hope you win so you could show me that, hey, it is somebody out there. And I'm gonna share this with you. I share this with Marie Mott as well. I hope both of y'all win. Because if y'all win and y'all do what y'all say y'all gonna do, that'll let me know, well, maybe I need to revisit this voting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way I'm looking at it, it always play out the way I see it. I'm like, okay, y'all say y'all gonna vote for y'all. The people who vote for you, they get in, and you do nothing. You just go with the status quo. And I say this, I'm gonna say this to you, and I've said this to Marie Mott. These are the only two people I've said this to, and I'm saying it to you publicly. I really do hope you win, so you can show not only me, but other people. If you voting, I'm gonna say this. If you voting, look at the people who run it. And I really believe that you about what you say you about, but to really show that, you gotta get in there. And I know that. So I really hope you are about what you say you about. I really hope you get in there so you can show at least me, hey, when before I ran, I came on the deprogram show. I said I was going to go back to the project. I said I was going to go back to East Chattanooga, and you see me coming back on the deprogram show saying X, Y, and Z. So, man, I applaud you because I ain't even had another mayoral candidate come to me. I haven't.
Well, that should tell you something.
Oh, it definitely do. It definitely do. Man, I appreciate you, Mr. Brewer. And I don't know if it's too late to go make sure I'm registered, but I'm gonna check it out. And if I am registered, you got my vote. I don't even vote, but if I I don't know how long the process is. At one point, I was registered to vote, but I'm gonna go see am I registered, and you got my vote. But I'm gonna tell you this: if I'm registered to vote, and I vote for you, if you don't do at least what you say you gonna do, you gonna hear from me. That's just who I am. But if you do what you say you gonna do, you also gonna hear from me
Well,
saying, I'm gonna say, hey, you a real one.
I think that's fair. And I think the deadline for registering is Monday. So I think you get, if you're going to check it out, you need to do it fast, because I think Monday's the last day you can register for this election.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna use this as a trial run. I'm gonna go make sure I'm ready. You said Monday is the deadline, so I got
think
to
so.
what? So I got to. I'm gonna look into it. So I got to what? I guess 5 o'clock Monday or some 3 o'clock or something like that.
5 o'clock Monday. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, I got plenty of time then, because guess what? I'm off the rest of the day, and I'm also off a lot of that time Monday. So I'm going to handle my business and make sure I get registered. And I'm gonna say this, and people can get mad. I'm going to vote for Monty Bruell. That's me. I ain't telling you to, but that's me, because he the only one I seen in my neighborhood. He the only one I seen with my people talking about what needs to happen. If you don't like it, that's on you. I salute you, my brother. This is the Deprogram Show, and we appreciate y'all, and we out.